Imagine waking up this Friday, September 12th, and realizing that the simple blue badge you've relied on for years to make your everyday journeys easier has suddenly become subject to major new rules. For millions of disabled drivers and their families, this update is not just a small adjustment, it's a significant shift that could change how you use your car, where you can park, and what kind of penalties you might face if you don't fully understand what's happening. That's why today's discussion is so urgent, because the blue badge scheme is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. For many, it's the difference between being able to live independently, get to essential medical appointments, do shopping without worry, and take part in daily activities that others might take for granted. So let's break down what this all means, how it affects you from this Friday, and why it's more important than ever to stay informed and prepared. The blue badge scheme has always been a cornerstone of accessibility in the UK, designed to give disabled people greater freedom and mobility. It allows badge holders to park closer to their destinations, often in spaces that are not available to the general public, and it provides exemptions from certain restrictions, making life easier and fairer for those who need that extra help. But changes coming into effect this Friday are stirring up serious conversations across communities because they touch on how the scheme will be enforced, who qualifies, and what happens if the system is abused. Many of you might be asking, why change something that has worked for decades? Authorities argue that the system has faced increasing misuse, rising fraud, and inconsistent application of rules across different councils, and that these changes are meant to bring in more fairness and prevent abuse. But the truth is, genuine blue badge holders are the ones who must now pay close attention and adapt to what's coming next. One of the most immediate things people will notice is stricter enforcement. Councils across the country have been under pressure to clamp down on misuse of blue badges, with reports that non-disabled drivers have been using them illegally to access spaces meant for people who truly need them. Starting September 12th, enforcement officers will have greater powers to inspect and confiscate badges if misuse is suspected. This means that even genuine holders will need to be extra careful, ensuring that badges are displayed properly and used only by the person they were issued to, or someone driving on their behalf. Gone are the days when a relative could casually borrow a badge to park closer without the badge holder being present. These changes are meant to draw a sharp line, but for families who sometimes navigate shared transport, this may feel like an added stress. Another key change you'll feel almost immediately is in the parking rules themselves. For years, blue badge holders have enjoyed certain exemptions from time limits, fees, and restrictions in many areas, but councils are tightening the framework. Some zones that previously allowed badge holders to park without time restrictions will now introduce maximum stay limits. This means you could find yourself rushing back to the car because what used to be a safe all-day spot is suddenly restricted to a couple of hours. It's being argued that these changes are meant to ensure turnover in high-demand areas, but many disabled drivers worry this will make daily life far more complicated, especially when medical appointments or essential errands often take longer than expected. Imagine being in a hospital appointment that runs late and then stepping out only to find a ticket slapped onto your car. That is exactly the fear that is growing among the community. There's also a renewed focus on digital checks. From September 12th, more councils will be rolling out technology that allows wardens to scan badges and instantly confirm validity through a central database. This shift means that counterfeit badges, which have been a rising problem, will be easier to detect. But it also raises questions about errors in the system and the potential for genuine holders to be unfairly challenged if a database hasn't updated correctly. If you've ever had a delay in renewing, or if your details aren't synced properly, this could cause unnecessary stress. The advice being given is clear. Check your badge, check your renewal date, and make sure all your information is up to date before this Friday to avoid any unpleasant surprises. Another controversial aspect of the changes is linked to who actually qualifies for a blue badge. The system was widened a few years ago to include people with hidden disabilities, such as those with anxiety, autism, or other conditions that affect mobility in ways not immediately visible. While this expansion was welcomed by many, councils have struggled to cope with rising demand and accusations of inconsistency in how applications are judged. From September 12th, stricter assessment criteria are being rolled out in some regions, with more emphasis on medical evidence and in-person assessments. For those renewing or applying for the first time, this means a tougher, sometimes more invasive process, where you'll need to prove in greater detail why you qualify. While the aim is to make the system fairer and cut down on abuse, many applicants fear it could mean longer delays, more rejections, and a sense of being disbelieved when they already face daily struggles. With new rules come new penalties, and this is another area where the changes will be felt sharply. From Friday, fines for misuse of blue badges and for parking violations by badge holders will increase in several councils. This is intended to serve as a deterrent, but for genuine holders, it means even small mistakes could cost dearly. Forgetting to display your badge correctly, overstaying in a newly restricted zone, or misunderstanding a local rule could now lead to hefty fines that are far more damaging than before. For pensioners and those on fixed incomes, even a single penalty notice could cause real financial strain. This is why staying informed is absolutely critical, because ignorance of these new rules will not be accepted as an excuse. Another change many may not have expected is the introduction of designated blue badge bays in some areas that now come with new restrictions on vehicle type. Certain councils are planning to phase out access for higher emission vehicles from blue badge bays in city centres, tying this into wider clean air zone policies. This means that, while you might have relied on those spaces for years, suddenly your vehicle could be deemed unsuitable, forcing you to park further away unless you upgrade your car. Critics argue this is deeply unfair to disabled drivers, many of whom cannot afford to switch to newer, low-emission vehicles at short notice. Supporters say it's about balancing accessibility with environmental goals. Either way, it's a change that could disrupt many people's lives starting immediately. Public reaction to these changes has been mixed. Advocacy groups for disabled people have welcomed tougher crackdowns on fraud, but they've also raised alarms about the unintended consequences. They argue that while stopping misuse is essential, councils must not forget that genuine badge holders are already dealing with immense challenges. Making parking more complicated, riskier, or more expensive could isolate people further and strip away the independence the blue badge scheme was created to support in the first place. Many charities are calling for clearer communication, transitional support, and exemptions for vulnerable groups, but whether this will be implemented fairly across all councils remains to be seen. It's also important to note that these changes are not happening in isolation. They are part of a wider trend of councils tightening rules, boosting enforcement, and trying to balance accessibility with other policy goals like traffic reduction, climate action, and revenue generation. This Friday's shift is just the latest step in a longer journey, and more updates are likely in the months ahead. That's why staying connected and keeping an eye on official announcements is so important, because what applies in one city may not be the same in another, and national consistency is still lacking. For those watching today, the big takeaway is this: don't assume the rules you've been used to will still apply from September 12th. Check your badge, check your local council's website for updates, and be extra cautious about how and where you park. Display your badge correctly, make sure your paperwork is up to date, and be aware of any new time limits or restrictions in your area. If you're in the process of renewing, prepare for more scrutiny and gather the medical evidence you may need to support your case. And above all, be prepared for enforcement to be stricter and penalties harsher, because that is the reality from Friday onwards. Think about what's at stake here. For many, the blue badge is not just a piece of paper, it's freedom. It's being able to go shopping without fear of walking too far. It's attending medical appointments without worrying about parking miles away. It's seeing friends and family, staying active in the community, and maintaining independence. When rules around this scheme change, it affects lives in a very real way. That's why it's so important we talk about it now, before these changes land, so that you're not caught off guard. And before we wrap up, if you found this update helpful and you don't want to miss any more urgent news like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. We cover every major update that affects seniors, disabled people, and anyone relying on benefits or essential schemes like the Blue Badge. With more changes sure to come, you'll want to be the first to know so you can stay ahead and protect your rights. Hit that subscribe button, join our community, and stay informed, because the days ahead will be challenging, and together we can make sure no one is left in the dark. This is more than just a parking update. It's a shift that could affect independence, mobility, and everyday life for millions. The clock is ticking, and from September 12th, the rules will not be the same. Stay alert, stay informed, and most importantly, stay prepared.